Welcome to PE Scholars PE Insights Podcast, conversations about physical education with me, your host, Nathan Walker. Yes, it is. This is the place to be if you're passionate about PE. If you need a bite-sized podcast of conversations from inspirational PE practitioners to inspire you and to get you to reflect on your practice, this is the place for you. Please like, follow and subscribe and share with all of your friends and colleagues because the success of this podcast is completely down to you and how you use it. I care about what you take away from every single episode. So please let me know. Give me a comment, reflect, give me some feedback. And if you'd love to come onto the podcast and have a conversation with me about PE, please do reach out. I can't wait to have a conversation with you all. I really hope you enjoy the content and I really hope there's some key takeaway messages for you. Don't forget, keep inspiring those children and young people through physical activity and movement because you make a difference. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And what are we waiting for? Let's dive in. Yes, hello everyone. Can I start with an apology? It's been a very busy time for my family recently as we welcome the birth of our second son. So as you can imagine, lots of plates spinning at the minute. So apologies for the delay in releasing this episode, but I'm sure you can understand. Today's guest is the fantastic Anna Sheppard. I'm going to let her introduce herself to you in the first question. You're going to want to catch this one. It's a great episode, so grab a drink, notepad, and enjoy it. Hi Anna, welcome to the PE Insights podcast.
Hi Nathan, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Actually, it's a nice day here in the UK for once. It's midday and it's pretty warm. So I know you're over there in Southeast Asia. Thank you for staying up late and joining me.
No worries. Pleasure to be on. Pleasure to be asked.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. It's taken a little bit of time for us to get this sorted. I think we've kind of missed each other here and there about 6 times. So I'm really happy to finally get on.
It's a privilege. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So first question then, which is the question everyone gets when they come on. I'd like you just to tell myself and the listeners a little bit about your educational journey so far.
This is probably the longest question. Obviously, went to school myself, absolutely loved primary PE. I went to a very small primary school where I had what I remember as PE every single day. I don't know whether that was actually true, but I felt like we played different sports every single day and I absolutely thrived on it. Couldn't wait to get to secondary school, couldn't wait to have the opportunity to play lots of different sports and different activities in PE. And I suppose it was the first time where I had female role models, female PE teachers. Obviously, this is going back where boys did boys PE with the male PE teacher and girls did girls PE with the female PE teacher. And absolutely loved it. I guess I was quite competent. I was good. So had very positive experiences and that I was picked for sports teams and things. So really, really, really enjoyed it. Went on to do GCSE PE. That was the first GCSE that I ticked the box for. My parents didn't want me to do GCSE PE. So that was a bit of a battle in my house.
Yeah, tricky.
Had the same conversations when I chose my A-levels. Wanting to do A-level PE. My parents didn't want me to do A-level PE, didn't see that it perhaps had as much value as, I'm sure they think differently now, but it was the first A-level to be put down and the only one that I really felt passionate about. And when I finished my A-levels, I knew that I wanted to go on and study something in sport related. Wasn't necessarily wanting to be a PE teacher at that time. So I went to Exec, did my sports science degree, enjoyed it, but wasn't ready to go on and do a PGCE. I just don't think I had the confidence at the time to do it. I know lots of your guests that have been on have been like GCSE drama students. There is absolutely no way that I would have been a drama student, would not have put myself in front of people. And to be honest, that was my biggest fear in terms of becoming a PE teacher, was that standing up in front and doing it. So I didn't go on to do my PGCE. At university, I started to play rugby and I had an opportunity to leave Exeter and go to New Zealand to play rugby. So that's what I did. Planned to go for a year, ended up staying for 5 years.
Of course you would, wouldn't you, in New Zealand? Absolutely.
Yeah. And at the end of that year, because I travelled and played rugby, decided, well, I've either got to go home and get a job back in the UK or try and find a job here, and just landed on my feet really. So I took a job with an organisation called Special Olympics, and they were looking for somebody to set up their inter-school sports program for people with intellectual disabilities. In the few years previously, children had been moved out of special schools and special needs units, and they put into the mainstream, and they had no sport. They had no or limited access to PE programs. So Special Olympics were trying to get into schools and try and provide opportunities. And it was the most unbelievable job I've ever had. Every day,
really rewarding, right?
Absolutely. Every day I would wake up excited to go to work because I knew that I was making a difference. And it sounds a little bit corny, but I knew that the children I were working with were having new opportunities through sport. I knew that the parents were having these opportunities. They were meeting other families. The teachers within the special needs units or the PE teachers in the school were suddenly given opportunities for those children to then thrive. And within a few years, we had over 1,000 children that were able to access these different activities. So it was just the most unbelievable role I've ever had. But it had to end. Along the way, I met my husband. We moved to Australia, took a job with the Commonwealth Games. So I had an opportunity to sort of link back to elite sport, some of the stuff that I'd done in my degree, and really enjoyed that. But obviously, games come to an end. It was a short-term contract. And then took a role with the Australian Sports Commission with their anti-obesity campaign, looking at after-school sport for young people. And because it was part of the anti-obesity campaign, it was trying to use non-traditional sports to help children become more active. So I learned all about the game sense approach and provided a lot of training for PE teachers, for sports coaches going into primary schools, and absolutely loved that experience as well. And it was a good opportunity to put that together with the stuff that I've been doing with Special Olympics. We moved to Perth, and I had a job with the Heart Foundation doing physical activity, more policy work. And it was more like health promotion, population health. The best way to get people active from a population health perspective is to get them walking, to get them cycling. So again, working with schools, walk to school campaigns, riding to school campaigns, but then also that policy side, we're looking at new developments in terms of bike racks and how do you get from A to B in terms of walking and cycling and public transport. But didn't have that feeling that every day I would wake up like I had back at Special Olympics, knowing that I was making a difference. I couldn't see or feel the difference. Had the opportunity to become an expat. We moved to Jakarta and I couldn't work. And I went back to my rugby roots, went and joined a rugby coaching course and thought, well, I'll just get involved in some coaching. Met a PE teacher there, a guy called Terry Weston. And I don't think even today he realises the impact that he's had. And during those coaching experiences, he said to me, I don't understand why you're not a PE teacher. Like, you clearly enjoy coaching. You've clearly got the right background. Why are you not a qualified PE teacher? And I said, well, I missed the boat. I didn't do my PGCE when I finished my degree. I don't really know how I'm going to go back to the UK and do all of this. I've now got 2 children. It's not possible. And he said, it is possible. You can train overseas. Honestly, you should think about doing it. And that sort of planted the seed to then think about retraining. And I actually started listening, sort of Googling and listening to podcasts at the time, and started listening to PE related podcasts. And the PE Geek was around at the time. Ryan's Under the Umbrella PE podcast was there. And actually started to think, you know what? Maybe I could do this. Maybe I'm not so old. Maybe I'm not so outdated. All those things that I've done, the game sense, the working with children with disabilities, it was all relevant. All these experiences that I had. Absolutely. We then took another expat posting and we moved to Egypt, and it just all fell into place. We turned up at Social Touch one morning. I had a really brief conversation with a teacher who was there about, I might do my PGCE. I'm thinking about doing it. And he said, see that man over there, go and have a conversation with him. He's the head teacher. He's also the mentor for all the PGCEs that happen here. Just go and have a chat to him. Literally had a quick chat. By the end of that day, was signed up for the PGCE with the University of Sunderland, was put in touch with Phil Mathey, who was the head of department, and then started coming into the P department, was volunteering until the following academic year when I then did my PGCE, and I kind of haven't really looked back, to be honest. Went from being a PE teacher to head of department, and it's all sort of been a pretty brilliant, diverse but long-winded journey, to be honest.
It's fascinating, really, isn't it, how like your involvement and your passion and love for movement, physical activity and sport has also opened those doors for you in terms of career opportunities. So like there's been that regular theme of you playing touch rugby or rugby, and being involved in sport communities has led to those opportunities to end up where you are now. And what's your current role now? So
my current role now is
yeah.
I'm head of department at the Alice Smith School, which is the oldest British international school in Malaysia. And then I'm fortunate enough that I also chair the FOBISIA PE and Sport Committee. And a lot of this has come about because it's that imposter syndrome, I think. So as I qualified to become a teacher, I was reading as much as I could. I felt that I had perhaps gaps in my knowledge compared with other people who were of a similar age. So I was reading as much as I could. I was listening to podcasts, getting involved in as much CPD as possible. And FOBISIA is amazing in terms of CPD.
Yeah,
and then when there was an opportunity, and when there was an opportunity to then be part of that committee, and they were looking for somebody to take on the CPD lead, and Lewis Keynes was the chair at the time, I just jumped on it because I just saw it as a great opportunity for me personally and professionally, but also how much I've gained from other people helping me along the way, and that sharing of whether it be resources or sharing of ideas. When I was doing my PGCE, I was so fortunate to have a head teacher who, I mean, literally, he would get changed, put his tracksuit on, and he would be out there watching my lesson, meeting with me afterwards. And he'd said, you might be doing your PGCE overseas, but we are treating this like you're in the UK, and you will go through the rigor of a PGCE like you would have back home. And, you know, I'm so grateful that he was like that, because it's made me a better teacher, a better PE professional, a better all-round person in schools. And one of the things that he made me do, and I was happy to do, was just go and observe. Go and watch the music teacher, go and watch the drama teacher. This person's brilliant for assessment. This person's brilliant for questioning. So that's what I did. I just went and watched as many people as possible. And still now, I love it. I love all the CPD. So was fortunate enough to take the CPD role with FOBISIA. And then over time, I now chair the committee. So it's really privileged to be part of and hopefully guide schools. So it's really
an amazing organisation and amazing committee that I've been obviously part of when I was born in Malaysia myself. So brilliant. And I'm really keen to kind of find out a little bit more about your views now about physical education, because as a postgraduate PE program coordinator, I love reading applications like yours, actually, because most of the applications that I read do come from undergrads who've just finished their degree and they want to become a PE teacher, or an undergrad who finished a degree maybe 1 or 2 years ago and they've got some experience. But I actually really enjoy reading the applications of someone who's taken a bit of a different route and built up all these experiences, and I love that. How then has all of the experiences that you've had and your learning and reading that you've alluded to shaped your view of what PE is? What are your thoughts on physical education?
Yeah, I was trying to reflect on this because I haven't come through the traditional, I haven't been in a situation where I've ever had to teach the skills and drills traditional PE.
Okay.
So I feel like I've almost skipped that. And so I came from that game sense training in Australia. I then came into a school under Phil Mathey as my head of department, overseeing my PGCE, who was forward thinking, very open-minded, had different views around PE. It was very normal in that school. We were a PYP school for primary. It was very normal to see activities, and we're talking quite a few years ago now, actually, because time has evolved, but normal to see things like parkour on the curriculum. Whereas I still hear conversations today where people are saying all these alternative activities, whereas they've never been alternative activities for me. It's just been part of what I've learned to
Brilliant.
do and what I've believed is the right thing to do. So I mean, I wonder what I put on my application back when I did my PGCE. I imagine I would have pulled together all of the experiences that I've had, and I certainly think all of these different experiences I've had are making me a better teacher. And I think a good PE department is made up of some people who come straight out of school and they qualify because they know they want to be PE teachers. But I think there's also massive benefits in having people that have come from diverse, different backgrounds. We don't want to all be the same. And I think the fact that I've done work in policy around physical activity and walking and cycling, I mean, I've been able to transfer some of that when I think about policies within school and taking a step back and thinking about the bigger picture. The fact that I've had to work with, children and adults with intellectual disabilities and quite profound disabilities has helped me. I mean, I was fortunate in 2003 to go to the Special Olympics World Summer Games, and we took 40 athletes with intellectual disabilities all the way from Auckland to Ireland.
Wow.
For 4 weeks. So when I go away on a sports trip now for 4 days, it's easy, right? It's easy when you've had people away that can't dress themselves properly, or they can't do things as easily. Your planning and things has to be so much better when you're working with people that can't do things for themselves, and you've just got to think 5 steps ahead, not 2 steps ahead. So I think it's certainly those experiences have helped me personally.
That's why I enjoy reading those applications, because I'm thinking about how those experiences are going to transfer into your developing journey, your journey as a developing teacher. So it's always fascinating. So you're someone who's in a position of responsibility in physical education. What are your sort of aims then for pupils in PE from your perspective, or your department's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think PE is still it's the magic, isn't it, of the school day. It's still the only subject where we teach through movement. I know subjects like drama may say, oh, well, we do that as well, but we guarantee that every core PE lesson there is movement as part of a child's day, and it might be the only part of the day where a child moves to for an extended time. I mean, we hope that obviously they do at break time and lunchtime and things, but it might not be. So I just think we're in such a privileged and fortunate position to have those children in front of us. We don't get them enough. I mean, I would advocate for PE every day. We don't have that every day. But we also see children at their best. We see all the emotions. We see the elations that PE and sometimes activities like sport through PE will bring. The emotions associated with winning a point or winning a game. They're uncontrollable, aren't they? The emotions take over in those situations. And then we also see children at the opposite end of the spectrum who can be very upset, or they can be distraught, or they can be frustrated. And I think we're in a situation where we are able to teach through some of those emotions, through different activities, through movement. I just think we're so lucky to have that opportunity. And I know Will Swayze always says, we can be the Marmite. And we can be children, either whether we remember our PE experiences for good and for bad. And, we have the opportunity to shape the future. And I guess when I think back to some of the work I did around physical activity and population health, we know that people aren't as active as a population as we need them to be for all of the health benefits. And whilst we can't fix that as PE teachers, we can certainly go a long way in helping that situation, and we can provide those positive emotions as children come through our care.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think you summarised that really well in terms of placing movement at the heart of everything, and how our subject is kind of one that does it incredibly well. I know you kind of posted it maybe a couple of days ago, and you had a really powerful conversation this morning. And I haven't prompted you about this, but I just wanted to know whether you could share anything. So you were talking about maybe a hybrid approach to curriculum design, and you had a chat this morning with some people about how they're approaching it. What are your thoughts around that? What are you currently doing? What were their thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't know if hybrid is the right phrase. It's a term that I used, and I know perhaps others, it maybe academically it means something different. I'm not sure. So we, as a department, we've been on a journey to redesign our curriculum. We've had the opportunity to really strip it back and start again, and we looked at a backwards by design approach. What do we want our children to be if we bump into them in 10 years time, 20 years time? What do we want that to look? What do we want them to be doing? And we all agreed as a department, we don't mind what they're doing in terms of physical activity, but we want them to be physically active, and spent a lot of time looking at the definition of physical literacy. And this was pre the consensus statement. So we were looking at the IPLA definition, and then working backwards, well, how are we going to get them to that point? What can we do in PE in terms of looking at their attitude towards PE and sport? What skills would we like them to gain within the context that we are in? We can't teach them everything, but what are we going to prioritize? And then what experiences would we like them to have, whether that be taking them on a school trip that involves this, or making sure that within student residentials that they're able to have access to outdoor ed. So we took quite a broad approach in terms of, what do we want them to have? We looked at what concepts we wanted them to think about and how that they would be weaved into our curriculum journey from year 7 all the way through to year 13 or to year 11, because 12 and 13 becomes a lot more sort of recreational.
Yeah.
So then we spent a lot of time mapping out that journey and looking at some of which, and I know that some people don't like this approach, but we still had to look at which activities we were going to offer within our curriculum. So whilst it wasn't necessarily the activities that drove the curriculum, there are certain things in our curriculum that are there. So badminton, if we didn't offer any badminton in the environment that we are in, we would almost be doing the children an injustice, because it's social capital within Malaysia. So, and we have the facilities to do it. We have the equipment. It would be ridiculous not to offer badminton. But how are we going to make sure that badminton is different in year 7? Do we need to also offer it in year 8, year 9, year 10, 11? Probably not. And if we do, where does it appear, and how is it going to be different, so that the unit in year 7, which may be more traditional looking in the sense of the different skills, if we can look at the concepts, maybe in year 7 we're looking at space and movement as our concepts, and how can they use space, and how can they use movement to create space, or how can they use movement to protect space. Maybe in year 9, when badminton reappears, we're looking more at control, or we're looking at fitness, or we're looking at different concepts. So there's a different slant on the same activity. So part of our curriculum is based around activities. We have an amazing 25 by 50 meter swimming pool. Again, we would be doing our children an injustice if we didn't use that space that we have regularly.
Yeah, of course you would.
I didn't want to have just swimming on the curriculum. If they want to do swimming, they can join the swim squad. And I think that's the luxury of being in an international environment, is we have amazing sports programs, so we can keep our PE and sport quite separate. So within our aquatics curriculum, one unit might be life-saving, something else is personal survival. Stand-up paddle is an option, or not an option, it's part of the offering. There could be a unit of water polo. So some of our units are activity driven. Some of our units we use models-based practice. So we're coming up to obviously the end of the year. We've all got relationships with the groups that we teach. We have our children come across in tutor groups. They have the same teacher for the full year. And now when our groups come across, we are going to mix them all up. So we'll have 3 classes all engaging in a sport education unit. And it's more about the sport education than it is about the activity. So
the activity, yeah.
The year 8s are going into athletics. We're very lucky. We have a track, and it just fits really, really nicely in terms of the concepts that we are looking at. So we've got a model-based approach for this unit, and that we're doing sport education. We've still got our concepts. So the concepts, I think for this unit coming up, they're responsibility, leadership, motivation. So we'll start to look at, what's the relationship between motivation and leadership? What's the relationship between responsibility and motivation? And we'll, as we go through the unit, consider some of the thinking around that. And it just provides all of our students an opportunity to engage with PE. So those students who are not necessarily so physically able, or they're not as motivated by being physically active, or they think, why am I doing javelin, or why am I doing this? They can at least find a purpose to what they're doing and engage with some of the thinking around what they're doing. We know they're not going to love every single unit. It's not going to be their favourite subject for all of them, and that's okay. But our job is to ensure that they have a positive experience and that they continue to learn across their journey. And if we can improve their skills so that they then develop that physical literacy, then we're doing our job. And so we have our activities, we had our bottles-based approach, we've got concepts within there. And, some of our units are more skills-based than others. My favourite unit to teach is personal survival. I mean, it's all about skills and then applying those skills to problem-solving scenarios.
Yeah.
And it's got massive amounts of purpose, because why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because it could save your life at some point.
Save a life, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I love teaching personal survival because it's just got, large amounts of relevance for every single student in that group. But if we didn't teach the skills, we can't, there is no personal survival unit. So I do think that we can't move away from skills completely. And it is about context. And I know that what works in our context might not work in someone else's context.
Yeah. It's all about nuance, isn't it? And the professional sort of decision making from the person who's in charge of making those decisions. But I was really interested in terms of when you started talking about concepts. The first two concepts you mentioned were movement in space and then control. And then the next concepts you mentioned were like leadership and teamwork and communication. So what's the kind of balance like then between concepts linked to movement and concepts linked to maybe more holistic type things? Is there a mixture, or
it's an absolute mixture. I don't know I should have a look at that in terms of percentage, and part of it is how well certain concepts fit. And it has taken a little bit of playing around with the combination of concepts. So things like a really successful unit, which, when we've had discussions within our department, I think we would all say that our touch rugby unit has been really successful. And the concepts have been, this is with year 7, like movement, space. We've gone sort of back to basics in terms of movement and space. But then we've added in evasion. And when we first put in evasion, the reaction from some of the staff was, well, it should be invasion, not evasion. Well, let's go with it. Let's see how it works. And if by the end of the unit we don't like evasion, then we'll consider making it invasion. And it was brilliant because obviously we had a lot of different activities. It wasn't traditional touch. There was a lot of activities that were in tag type activities or trying to get away from opponents. And then a lot of the thinking around it. Well, when would we use evasion in another area of your life? And the conversations that we had were unbelievable. We had people say, well, I use it in dance. Okay, well, tell me more about that. Well, when I'm dancing with my partner, I evade and I move away, and then we come back together. Things that I hadn't thought about. Somebody else saying, well, when I'm rock climbing, I look at the route and I'm evading the more challenging route, and I'm looking for how I can move up the wall. So it's been brilliant. It's been absolutely brilliant adding in these concepts, and it's credit really to Julie Stern and the work that she does through the learning that transfers, because it's been set around her framework, and it just gives all of our units a framework in terms of concepts. So sometimes they're PE specific, and then other times we are looking at responsibility and motivation. Something like that makes for really nice conversations, because if you've taken responsibility, are you more motivated, and what does responsibility mean to you? What does motivation mean to you, and how can they work together? And how can you link it to PE? And then how can you then transfer that to another area of your life? And it's all about just making our PE curriculum as relevant, also challenging, but relevant for every single student.
Yeah, and some of those sort of wider aims help young people that become adults make those decisions around physical activity and what we think are healthy decisions for the future of their lives. I like that the distinction between invasion and evasion as well, because I think if you went with invasion, that unit of tag rugby would look very similar to tag rugby, whereas the fact you went with evasion kind of changed the dynamic slightly, and the lessons might not look as specific to tag rugby because you maybe removed directions. Or I'm thinking of when I taught Kiorahi, the Maori sort of evasion game where there's a target in the middle, tupu and that sort of stuff. That would fit in that model. And it's just what I think what you've kind of summarized really well is the fact that you're thinking about this as a department creates those really powerful conversations around planning and justifying why you do what you do, right?
Yeah, and we've got other units. So our year 7s have just started their international sports unit. And each week, so obviously again, we're coming to the end of their first year at secondary. They will have had various different concepts if they've come through. They will have learned different skills if they've come through. And this unit's not so much about teaching them skills. They're going straight into African versions of dodgeball one week to wrestling another week. And it's about making links and connections across history of sport and the geographical sort of development of sport, and giving them and making sort of the assumption or using the skills that they have already to then develop a different aspect of their thinking within PE. Our year 9s do a disability sport unit, and they're looking at boccia and seated volleyball. And one of the concepts is empathy, and how can we learn more about disability sport through playing disability sports. And I just think it's brilliant to have a diverse offering, because it will be some of the children who perhaps aren't as physically capable who thrive within those units, because they'll find something different that they can connect with.
Yeah, I think what you've kind of done is provide an example of how maybe heads of department can still keep movement at the heart and still have the elements of skill development, but also think about the way they design and what they use as organisation. So it's really, I think it's valuable for people to reflect on the conversation that we've just had. Let's move towards top tips for PE teachers then. You're an experienced PE teacher and leader, and you've observed many lessons and seen many teachers from different countries and around the world. What do you think are some of the top tips you could provide a PE teacher?
I think it's making those connections, isn't it? Forming the relationships with the children that you teach. You know, when we talk about making units relevant for them, do you actually know what that relevance is? And taking the time to have a chat and to talk to them. So my top tips would be to connect with students, connect with your colleagues, and other colleagues around you. So going back to sort of my points earlier on around CPD, and you mentioned catching up with David and Ben this morning, make the effort to connect with people, because there's just so much out there that you can learn from. And then reflect. I think continue to reflect, and I think I do this more and more as I become more experienced. I don't know whether that's because you know more, or you just know the value of reflection perhaps, but just reflecting every lesson and how that feeds into the next lesson, or reflecting every unit and how that informs the next time you teach the unit, or reflecting from one unit to the next unit. I mean, it's constant, isn't it? But building time in to allow yourself to do it, because I think as PE teachers we are very busy, and often if you are teaching a full timetable, you go from one lesson to the next lesson to set up the next lesson to the next lesson, and then you're end of the day and you're grabbing your bag to get on the bus to go to the fixture, and then you come home, and then life starts at home.
You've got a life,
it's a job, isn't it, at the end of the day? But trying to make sure that you do reflect, and I think that helps you look after yourself as well. I think that's also good for your well-being. And then my other tip would be to support others. I can think of some amazing people that have helped me along the way and supported me, that do your bit to bring others along with you and support them in the process, because it's not always an easy job, and it is a busy job, that we do all need each other, I think, for us to be the best that we can be.
Yeah, the power of, I think you reflect on the power of relationships there in terms of connection and support. Again, without sounding too corny, I think we all know it's powerful, but how often do we do it, and how often do we prioritize that and kind of use each other to be the best person we possibly can be in front of those young children? Yeah, really good. And just then, so the final sort of section is there anything that frustrates you about the PE space at the minute? And if so, what are you doing about it to kind of challenge it?
Yeah, I guess my frustration is just that a child's experience is so dependent upon the teacher that they have in front of them. And then a department experience is so dependent upon the person leading that department. And I think change is happening. I think there are lots of amazing things that are happening out there, and sometimes I think that's overwhelming. I think there are people that want to make change to the way that they teach, or they'll attend a conference and they'll be presented with some amazing ideas around really forward-thinking PE, whether it's a concept curriculum, whether it's just different types of activities that they hadn't thought of implementing in their school. And then they go back to their school, they get busy, and it's not through a lack of wanting to change, but they just don't know how to change. And when I think how much time and energy we've put into the curriculum in my school and with the people around me that I've had helping me do it, it's a big job. Like, it's a huge job putting together a curriculum that is overwhelming. So I think there are people out there that also would like to change, but they don't change. So then they go back into their habits. So those children, are they getting the best experience? I don't know. I'm sure there's some wonderful things that are happening, but it's just so dependent upon the person that's delivering, and a department is at the sort of helm of what the head of department is doing, and the direction that they're thinking. So what am I doing personally about it? I mean, I try and continue to share stuff where possible. Something I do with my own department, which I think has been really, really positive, is every Monday I send out an email. It's always at the same time. I'm very predictable. It goes out at 7 a.m. and it has what's happening for the week for PE. And it might include things like cover, things that are happening in the school. If it's a change of unit, sort of the operational stuff goes into that email. But I also every week will share an article that I've enjoyed reading, or a podcast episode. It's up to them whether they read it or not, but the information is there. And I have tried to be strategic as I've brought in new things and change, that the choice of article supports the direction in which we're going. One week I forgot to put one in, or I didn't have something to put in. And they said, where's the article? Where's the article this week? We missed the article. So they do read them, and one of my colleagues, she does save it. She says, I haven't got time to read it today, but I've put aside time later in the week to read it. And I think, we can all be better at sharing, and it does make a difference. And, it sort of links back to the CPD stuff. And within the FOBISIA group, I try and share as much as possible. I try and encourage other colleagues to put themselves forward to present. When we run our conferences and our webinars and things, there's a real reluctance of people to share. Not because they're selfish, but because they don't have the confidence. They're concerned about putting themselves out there. Yet there's all these people doing amazing things in their schools. So I think if we can all, support each other, and within our schools do little CPD and share best practice from our lessons, if you can then do that on a slightly bigger scale, I think Twitter's not as good as it used to be, but that platform is still there as an opportunity and way of sharing. I think the people that are on there do gain a lot from it, mostly, for the most part. So just continue to share. What you're doing is amazing. I mean, you're continuing to get people's voices out there and share what people are doing, and I think it's really, really valuable. If people want to learn more, it's there for them. If they don't want to, well, then that's also okay.
Thanks for that your kind words as well. And I think it's you are leading by example in doing that, right? Because I hope you don't mind me sharing, but before we had a conversation today, you'd be like, oh, this is a bit daunting, a bit imposter syndrome-y and stuff. And it does take a little bit of confidence, doesn't it, to stand up in front of people and share what you're doing as good practice and say, hey, this works for me. But I think we just need more of it. And that was the intention with this podcast, is to be a platform for everyone's voice to share those sort of ideas. And And I agree with you. I don't think Twitter's the place it used to be. We've been on it for a long time now, but yeah, there are still pockets of nice things that happen, compliments, good sharing of practice that we need to kind of tap into and do more of. This is a really tricky bit, Anna. Can you try and summarize some of the key messages for the listener?
Oh, can I summarize the key messages? I mean, I haven't said it, but I think you have to be authentic to yourself, don't you, when you teach and when you work with children, and be the best version you can be. So I would advocate for continuing to read, continuing to listen to different podcasts and CPD and take the best bits. So I feel that our curriculum is not one kind of curriculum, which is why I have called it a hybrid curriculum. And I think it meets the needs of the children in the environment that we're in. And I would urge others to do the same. So I'm not saying that people should pick up my curriculum and take it into their schools, but do the best bits that work for you and be the best teacher that you can be, with the best bits of support and the people that you have around you.
Brilliant. That's a really nice way to kind of encapsulate everything you've shared, with a real focus on being the best version of yourself, professional development, and using the support sort of people around you to allow that to happen. Anna, it's been a pleasure having a conversation with you this afternoon. I've really enjoyed it. I've loved listening a little bit about what you're doing with your curriculum in the school and your thoughts around PE and stuff. And I think the listeners will enjoy reflecting on that and seeing what it looks like in their context, and hopefully think about what it could look like perhaps. And I'd also love potentially to organise a conversation with John, David and Ben and yourself to kind of get a few people around the table to talk a little bit more about that, if that'd be something you're interested in.
That'd be great. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks. No, brilliant. Thank you for coming on.
Amazing. Thank you so much.